I'm not going to lie. This video is at least partly prompted by Emotional Husky's leader or great person video. And no, it's not going to turn into a food fight. I mean, we're both Canadians, so the worst thing that could happen is, a hockey game. I just want to address some of the points he made about who should or should not be a leader in the game. I'll admit, I knew I was going to respond to Husky's video as soon as he used the word enlightened to describe the picks that Firaxis should have made. Enlightened is not objective. There's a lot of emotional baggage behind a word like that. For example, I think Firaxis's picks were enlightened, but my thinking and saying that don't make it so. The idea of defining who is and who is not a true leader for the game isn't really about reason or logic. It's about emotions and really personal opinion. And that's why I'm not going to say that my argument is based on a logical framework. As he said, it was and is his video. So he was/is entitled to make the decisions. And he does stick to the criteria he lays out about politicians, conquerors, and rulers being the only true leaders, except maybe for Gandhi. I agree he should be in the game, but he was not a de facto politician or leader. I think his rationales and arguments are consistently sound. He places several of the current Civ 7 leaders in his Great People column, not denying their achievements, but rightly saying they don't fit his criteria for a great leader. I wouldn't quibble over any of his choices. It all lines up if you buy his criteria. So all I want to question is, well, the entire foundation of his argument. While the Civilization series has made room for great leaders and great people as separate entities in the past, they did not go that route this time. At least not at the time I'm recording this. This time they opted to not distinguish between great leaders and great people, and that is where all the friction from Husky and many other players is coming from. It comes down to, do we accept that people who weren't conquerors, politicians, or rulers can be playable leaders in the game? Traditionally, most of the series leaders have fallen into those three categories. And I've played and enjoyed those games all the way back to the beginning. But I'll admit, the military aspect of the game is less exciting for me as time has gone on. Maybe at 65, I'm aging out and hanging up my Keshig and turning more to the worlds of science, culture, and diplomacy. And there is still room for these routes in the more recent games, but it is a lot easier to go down those paths if you have leaders who naturally incline in those directions. That inevitably means, from my point of view, the devs should absolutely continue to consider leaders as broadly as they have for this game. And broadly is the key word here. I don't want the game to lower its standards in terms of who gets in as a leader. I just want Civ 7 to have broader criteria. I mean, the game is called Civilization. And while I agree that all civilizations are founded on violence, I think when we hear that word, we think of a variety of things. Things we might not imagine when we have a game called, say, Age of Empires. When I play, I am building a civilization, not an empire. And when I hear players use the word, refer to their game as their empire, I kind of know where they're coming from. So for me, it makes sense to have the Bachs, the Dantes, the Da Vincis, the Newtons, the Lao Tzus, the Shakespeares. I can only imagine what takes on leadership he might have, alongside the Sun Tzus, Alexanders, Saladins, and so on. I not so long ago even made the case for Spartacus, but he was not a ruler or a conqueror, so I don't think he would fit the above-mentioned criteria. Again, though, I come back to a focus on words. Whenever someone suggests that someone should or shouldn't be a leader, you don't hear the mass of assumptions and expectations hiding behind it. But is there a should or shouldn't when it comes to leaders in the game? In any game? Sure, you can make it about that, but what matters to me more is whether or not the leaders we have in the game right now help make the game fun. And I would say all the leaders that Husky singles out as merely great people do make the game fun. Some, admittedly, more than others. If Blackbeard isn't a true leader, but I get to capture player ships for my growing pirate fleet, well, Edward Teach is now an official member of my Leaders Club. For me, ultimately, the distinction between great leaders and great people just isn't useful. Not for game purposes in any case. If history books want to make that case, then that's okay by me, even though my favorite undergrad history course on medieval history took a lives lived approach and eschewed the whole idea of great people and great events to focus on what life was like back then. By the way, her rate my professor score on her retirement was 4.8, so I'll back that up. But wouldn't it just be plain cool to have Archimedes in the game as a Greek leader? A militaristic scientific leader who gives you a stronger port and navy and a science boost. I can picture that. I think previous games unintentionally diminished the accomplishments of non-political military leaders by having them merely as great people. And Civ 7 has been a kind of corrective to that. So far from thinking that Civ 7 has gone off track with their selections, I think they might finally be on track. It's pretty clear there's no resolving such stark differences of opinion, but there are indications that Firaxis has not by any means given up on the conqueror-ruler side of the game. It just so happens that some of the militaristic leaders they've developed haven't been leaders of nation-states. As a sometime anarchist, I really can't get too worked up about that, except to smile a bit more. And I'm pretty sure since Gilgamesh has been dropped back in at this stage of the game's ongoing development, that other leaders from the game's past are coming as well. The devs simply wanted the game to have its own distinct flavor, even in terms of who you had to choose from to lead. I hope they continue to mix the two types of leaders while the game grows. As someone who prefers to rebel against our corporate overlords, I'm really having a tough time saying these words, but the company has been doing the right thing here, and I hope they continue to. Because the game continues to be fun, and some of the changes in the Test of Time update are being at least somewhat welcomed by previous naysayers. Not everyone, but some. The implications of what I'm arguing for all add up to an act of definition. How do we regulate who is great enough to get in the game, or great in the right ways? For example, as much as I like Calvin and Hobbes creator Bill Watterson, I probably wouldn't include him in the game, at least not for a few hundred years until his subversive impact in the world becomes much clearer. But what would be my criteria for who gets in and who does not? Again, I don't want to lower the standards of who we think is a great leader, but rather broaden them. I wouldn't presume to say who was and was not great in real life, but I would say that anyone who has had a significant impact in one of the 6 victory routes, well, not all of them are victory routes yet, obviously, but the 6 routes in the game could be considered great for our purposes, for game purposes. That probably seems too broad still, but it's the kind of thing you have to feel your way towards when you consider each historical figure. I think of Shakespeare, for example. He had a great cultural impact, not necessarily immediately, but he also had a diplomatic impact in terms of happiness, as we find diplomacy in the game, and being an empire critic and booster. So you could see him going those two different routes. Maybe our potential leader should be able to at least somewhat straddle two of the 6 main routes of the game. Another example would be Al-Khwarizmi, sorry for butchering that name, the inventor of algebra, and whose work improved knowledge of geography. He would fall under science, and it would be only a small stretch to say that he helped expansionism by improving what we know about the world's reach and terrain. And I would gladly welcome back a leader like Bismarck into the game, who, as a more traditional, by the game standards, leader, had a strong influence on diplomacy, the military, and the economic aspects of Prussia. And Prussia's in the game now, so I'm just waiting for him to drop. Again, I'm not saying I don't want to see familiar faces. I just want to see some that haven't been in the game before, and with different resumes. My feelings on the issue of who can be a leader are stronger than they are in regard to other aspects of the game. For example, as much as I enjoy Civ switching, if Firaxis decided that they were going to revert back to single Civs, I would be deflated, but I might eventually be able to cope. I don't know, but I think I could. It'd be a tough one. But if they decided they were going to go back to only the usual suspects from previous games as leaders, that would be even more disappointing to me. I've enjoyed these new leaders so much up to this point, and I've learned a fair bit of new history through leaders such as Jose Rizal, Saeed al-Hurra, and Ibn Battuta. As for Emotional Husky, I respect the position he has on this issue, and he certainly has the backs of a lot of players who are equally disappointed with the direction the game has gone in terms of designating leaders. I'm not going to change anyone's mind on this subject, for sure. I just wanted to present the reasonable alternative of opening up the idea of who might be a great leader in the game. And it comes down to emotions, like I said. I have a soft spot for rebels and revolutionaries, so I would absolutely include more of them as leaders in the game's traditional sense. And I've developed the same bored, impatient look Genghis Khan's character has in the Civ 7 lobby whenever I see another conqueror type enter the game. But that's an emotional response, not a logical one. Bring on the inventors, the artists, the jacks of all trades who Forrest Gump their way into the history books. I'm open to the possibilities as long as they are fun to play. The truth is, I can put up with Genghis Khan and Xerxes if someone else can put up with Lafayette and Ada Lovelace. There's room in the game for both philosophies. We just can't be purists. I know, that's a big ask for Civ 7 players, as I keep learning since I've waded more and more into the online side of the game. But the need for everyone to have only the type of leaders they like is exhausting. I'm happy to share the map with the kind of leaders I find tiresome, if others are okay sharing the map with leaders they feel are undeserving. There's a lot of both types of leaders in the real world. So maybe there's some realism in this game after all. Anyway, this has been Civilized Raccoon. If you've liked what you've seen or heard, please drop a like or a subscribe down below, and I'll see you next time.